Hello, everybody, and welcome to my session. And it is a pleasure to be able to continue on after Robert and echo what he was saying in his introduction about developing the whole child in a holistic way and getting the foundation right. And that is what I'm going to be looking about in my talk with you today is one, the issue of behavior comes up a lot in early years in the post-pandemic classroom and how we are addressing this. And during the session, due to the time constraints, I'm just going to briefly look at some maybe solutions we can add to our planning and our teaching. So this is most challenging time is connecting to the PowerPoint. So 1 second as we do that, and here we go. So welcome to the post-pandemic early years classroom. And I, along with many of you, have noticed how things have changed significantly since children have gone back into the classroom. And remember that in early years, it's sometimes that children have a very limited experience of their classroom pre-pandemic, and how going back is like starting all over again. And also the children who entered the classroom for the first time. And no other way except what we're doing now with masks and behavior issues have escalated. So let's have a think of where we are. We are ultimately in a unique time of our life. You know, globally, we have a commonality that we never had before. And all of us I'm looking at education, have got the same story. We went offline overnight and were expected to continue. And then we went back into the classroom and were expected to continue. And we have forgotten that children went through a very complicated stage in their education. Additionally, not only teachers had to have a new skill set, virtually overnight, they had to become online teachers, which is not a natural thing for a lot of us. And we were missing that face-to-face interaction where we can navigate the classroom, look and see what children are learning and tweak our curriculum planning to address that. When we're online, it was very difficult because children were easily distracted. They often had several devices on the go at the same time. And what I noticed particularly was the skill with digital literacy of copy pasting and using the tools to get the homework done. Additionally, the classroom was the family home. Your teaching area was somewhere where you relax, you share with your family. So we were crossing all those lines of where to switch off, and also the stresses that came with that. And a big thing, especially with small children, is that they lost their routine. Their online presence sometimes was needed at different times during the day. Their care at home was different, and also it was filled in with watching TV and just doing what they wanted, really. So we couldn't see the progression that comes with the curriculum and also having children doing a specific routine. And this is where we are now. And this information has come from the feedback I've had from teachers who recognize that this is going on within their classrooms. But the interesting thing is that if we work with older children, they can label it. If we're working with really young children, they don't have the sufficient skills to be able to talk about how they're feeling. And this can manifest into behavioral issues. Additionally, the children in early years don't have the patience that they had before. It's very difficult to get children engaged. So again, echoing what Robert said, is about how do we give them the tools to be able to express what they need to say? And how do we get the pockets of things that are missing from the curriculum from the pandemic? How do we fill those, and how do we progress? We're asking teachers to do an awful lot, and also address the issue of lack of focus, lack of concentration, and also behavior. So we have to look at where the children are and where we need them to be. But, you know, we're doing this with an old curriculum. So it's a good time to mention about social emotional learning versus mindfulness. These are very big now, especially after the post-pandemic going back to school, because Before, these were tokenistic things. I'm going to do a bit of mindfulness with my class. I'm going to do a bit of social emotional learning with my class. But what we realize are these are things that need to be integrated into the curriculum, dripped in throughout the day, not just a tokenistic approach that it's, well, we'll pop it at the end of an art lesson, or we'll pop it in at the end of a literacy lesson. Additionally, understanding the difference between these, this is about you within your environment, and this mindfulness is about developing the child, giving them the structures to be able to meditate, relax, and reflect, where social and emotional learning is about how you integrate with others and recognizing and developing empathy, and also knowing your place and their place in the world. And they are very good things to have within the class, but they are not the same thing. So if we look at the circle of behavior, we can see the triggering event, and you'll pop around and you'll see that it comes down to a behavioral response. And with conversation with teachers, we're seeing a lot of this behavioral response, which is happening, one, out of frustration, and two, that children don't have the skills to be able to focus, as I've mentioned. But again, what we need to look at is how we can address that emotional response by giving young children the tools to be able to talk about how they feel and how they fit into the place around them. And if we look here at this iceberg diagram, we can see we have the behavior is the tip, but look what's all down here. We have interactions, relationships, environments, and a big one here, communication and individual skills. And this is what I'm going to be looking at in this little time that we have together today, about how bringing in communication, because also the majority of us here today are working in English as a second language environment. How difficult it is sometimes to express yourself if you are trying to do it in another language. How difficult is that when a small child hasn't even got the vocabulary to be able to express or even know how they're feeling? How difficult is it for small children to be able to rationalize something and be able to give it a quantifier? So what we are looking at and what we are trying to do in the post-pandemic classroom is bringing social and emotional learning through the activities and lacing it in, weaving it in to the curriculum planning, so that we are on track with our curriculum, but also that children are given opportunities to be able to express themselves. So it's not seen as a target thing, it's seen as something that you, all the way through, you're asking. Just imagine you as a teacher, when somebody asks you, how are you feeling today? And you're able to say something, how validated do you feel? How do you feel about, right, I've got that off, I feel great. I was able to talk about that, or I was able to address a particular issue. So imagine that with a child. But remember, the children have their long working day within a classroom. It's not just a target thing in the morning, how are we today with emotions? It's also about making it obvious how they feel about the learning that they're doing as well. And as Robert said, most children want to do well and they want to succeed, but they also need to validate that by expressing themselves as well. So let's have a look at the challenges that we have in the early years classroom, the post-pandemic classroom. We have emerging special needs. And again, when we're working with children from 2.5 upwards, it's very difficult to be able to establish special needs. We may have an indication that a teacher who has been in the teaching environment for many years may be able to flag up certain things that they recognize. But again, we can't label it. It's possibly, always a possible special occasion, special needs that could activate behavior issues. And we also have emerging learning styles. And this is something that I'm quite keen on, because we do tend to forget that we have a learning style. We all have our own unique way of learning, and this is also extended to children. And as children are going through that cognitive development, they are developing their learning style. But we'll do a little bit more about that as we progress. These two are never too far away from ages and stages. And again, we have to think within our classrooms how the child born in January is completely different to the child born in December. We have that big arc of development. Normally, we try and aim for the middle, but what we are seeing is post-pandemic, there are certain development stages that have been jumped over, they have been missed because children need socialization, they need interaction. And that's another thing that's going to come up in this presentation about allowing children to have time to talk. They need to practice what they're hearing, not always receptive language, but also being able to speak. Your planning and evaluation, as we've gone back into the classrooms, we've just had to pick up from where we left off. And the guidance has been, well, you move ahead, and if you see gaps, try and fill those in. We just can't keep a curriculum on hold while children are moving through their school year. So it's been pretty tough for you as teachers to have to pack in quite a lot. Time, as I've just mentioned, again, what do you give time to in your class? Because very often with small children, we're working with a class book, we're working with objectives and criteria we want to get to, but is that for the children or for the school? And this is always another thing that I ask schools to look at. What are you trying to achieve with your curriculum? And often it's academic excellence, but are we developing the whole child by not rushing through? A big area, English as a second language, because again, most of these two, emergent special needs and learning styles, can affect how we learn English as well. What are you providing as resources for children to be able to speak in their mother tongue and transpose that into English and vice versa? And also, what do you do about social and emotional learning within your teaching and planning? So I love this, and I just popped it in. So very quickly, we never forget the process of learning in early years and how that continues into primary and secondary education, because everything that's done on the left side of the brain connects with the right side of the brain. And as you can see here, without the spatial relationships, with faces, shapes, and maps, we wouldn't be able to be doing letters and numbers. And without sequencing, it would be quite difficult for us to do all this with music and images. So there is this connection from one side to the other. And the amazing thing is that we all never reach 100% in each area, which makes us unique. However, during the pandemic, the connections that we make with fine motor skills and letters and numbers and using graphemes was not being met by drawing and construction. So we weren't developing these from one side to the other. So my point being, our individual learning styles were perhaps a little bit on hold because we were doing everything virtually on a digital platform. And this is something as well that I want to draw you back to, that we have to be thinking about how we're making these connections. And also, just look at this, we think in the present and we think in the past and the future. How are we activating that with children? So this is just a little reminder of where we need to get to and what we need to be doing as we become proactive now in the post-pandemic classroom. But I'm going to ask you a question too. First, think about, what is your learning style? Do you like to write notes? Do you like to watch things and then internalize that and then organize the information? Do you like to listen and watch? Do you like to be able to read and highlight what you want to take from that? Because one of the things that has come through with a lot of interactions with teachers is they develop their classes around how they learn. And they don't often think about all the different ways that other people learn. So if you're an audiovisual learner, you may gear your class up to just be that style of learning, which is not filtering out to the children who have different learning styles. So that's a good point for you to think about, what is my learning style? And be aware that there are many different ways that children are learning. We have solitary. Yeah, it's okay for a child to work by themselves. They have to learn to work with pair share or problem-based learning, but sometimes they achieve more when they're working solitary or more social. We have children who have great results going from one of these to the other, but also logical learners, physical learners, auditory learners. What are you doing in your class? Or are you anchoring a child to a desk each day? Now you remember just how you feel if you were a visual auditory learner and somebody was putting you in perhaps an environment where you were so solitary and with a book. How would you keep focused? How would you keep on task? So just remember this as you are planning your lessons or the next time you're in a classroom. Make a mental note of children and how they're learning. So very briefly, what can I add to my class? I appreciate fully that a classroom is a difficult area because you have an hour with one subject maybe, which realistically is only 45 minutes by the time the children have sat down, and also the behavior issues. Well, small changes to your regular classroom resources. If you are having to use resources that are embedded into the curriculum, what can I do to bring them out to reach my children? Also, understanding the diversity of learning styles. I'm not saying that every single class has to be tactile, hands-on, multisensory, total body contact. Boom. No, but what small changes can be added to an activity? And we'll be looking at that. Remember, in the child's perspective, they're sitting in a little desk looking at you, or on the carpet, on the floor. What are they actually getting from you? Many times when I work with teachers and parents, I get them to sit in their child's desk and chair and look at me and see how it looks from the child's perspective. What are they actually seeing? Where are they actually going with that? Explicit and passive learning. And also this goes with assessments. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And the same with your teaching practice. What are you saying? And what are they learning from the past? What are you going over? And for today's little section, I'm going to just be focusing on language and literacy to see how we can get a lot of what I've been talking about within a class. And I'm aware of the time. But basically, what you can see here with this little diagram is we want children to be able to understand this, internalize this. And sometimes having something like this on the wall is a good one. When a child is really frustrated, I used to say, just point to the color where you think you are. And sometimes it would be here and I'd have an indication. Children would recognize the cool colors for being okay and the hot colors for feeling a little bit stressed. So maybe they didn't have the vocabulary, but at least they could point and let me know. So very briefly, something that we never hardly give children the opportunity to do is talk. Talking in the class can often make us feel like as teachers we've lost control. We often say talk about it, and then we go around and children are talking about what they're playing, what they're doing, and they lose the thread. And also, talk can be very difficult to get children back on their task, but children need time to talk. And especially if you're working in an English as a second language environment, even with small children and they're using a mixture of languages, because again, they're passing on not only their experiences, their knowledge, words, what they know, but they get it out the way. They speak, they get it out of the way. I used to start my class in the morning with a 5-minute chat around where they were all allowed to talk, and then we'd quiet them down. They'd be listening to music while they were chatting in the background, and when the music stopped, they knew it was time to stop speaking. They'd got it all out the way, but they were able to get that and we could focus. But also speaking in the class, it's very difficult not to speak. Providing little opportunities to speak is really important. And that's why adding even images to your class materials, even small children, these ones are aimed at you within the event to be able to look at. And if I was to pop these images up and just say to me, give me, what do you see? I see a computer, I see a cup, I see hands. Okay, how old is he? I think he is 4, I think he is 5. What color is his jumper? It's red and it's blue. Where do you think he is? Somewhere hot and sunny. I'm getting information from you, from visual cues, because remember, you're very small and you can't write yet, but you want to express what's happening here. It could be a party, a celebration. Tell me about the colors. I can see orange. I can see blue. I can see what we're revising colors. Do you like? Yes, I love parties. I'm touching on social and emotional learning. And this for us as teacher, where do you want? I would love to be on the beach. I feel relaxed, I feel happy, I feel, so I'm hearing a lot of words. Now imagine if you have small children, again, using their interchanging language, being able to talk about what they see. It can be linked to my topic and linked to my theme, but then the children who find the book-based heavy sitting at the desk, they're suddenly interacting with visual cues, and you are passively evaluating what you can hear. Is there language coming from your topics? Are there language coming from your theme? You can ask them questions. The child who's fidgeting, you can say, John, what do you think? You're bringing him back. And another way to do this also, we're looking at the auditory children who are making the visual connections. I'm not going to play all of this because of the time, but listen to this. Okay, so I'm going to say, what do you think it is? Some children may say a shower, it could be water. So they have to be quiet. This is part of the game. Again, I can link this to my topic and themes, but then I'm going to offer them a visual cue so that they can make the connection with the auditory and also the visual. I'm going to elicit vocabulary. How does that feel? Feels great. I would feel, I'm happy. I'm trying to get the social and emotional learning in. I'm touching all the different areas of learning. Let's try one more. How does that make you feel? I'm frightened, what was that? It was windy. And somebody would say, last weekend it was windy in my grandmother's house. So we're getting, again, a lot of information. We've got the visual cue. So you can see how a class warm-up where I'm engaging all the learning styles with listening, and maybe, how do you feel? You're shivering, I'm hot, it's windy, getting some physical response. But I'm going to move on because we have limited time. One of the things that is often dismissed in class because it takes up a lot of time is children being allowed to do drawings. And again, this was something that was reserved for wet play or a Friday afternoon. But the one good thing about, if you have a child you feel is having some issues in the classroom, get them to sit down and do a drawing and talk through. Because talking through, you can often hear what the issue may be. Now, we are not equipped as psychologists in the classroom. We're not equipped to be able to do a diagnosis, but what it does do is give you the opportunity to have that dialogue with the child and find out exactly what the child is trying to transmit to you that is not done verbally, that may be coming out physically. This is also a great idea when children are listening to a story that fits in with their key English teaching. They may not be able to write it, but what are you hearing them take away from the story? And I love this idea of children in the class collaborating on a story where they're using the key English words from a story, talking about their emotions, talking about what they like, what I don't like, which is something we don't often value. A child doesn't always have to like something. I don't like the story. You've got a little child here who's not happy with the process, and the teachers have said, what don't you like about this? But look, collaborative, the beginning of problem-based learning, collaborative learning perhaps, where they're drawing the story sequence. And also here, another opportunity, looking at emerging special needs and also learning needs is look at this visual that the teacher has done for the very hungry caterpillar. So a child is using her visual cues and the sequences of the story. And you think about this simple activity is grammar in context, sequencing, the child thinking about the before, the now and in the future, the beginning and the middle and the end. Did you like, and also saying, well, I don't like pears, but the caterpillar liked the pears. I don't like strawberries, but being able to get that. Do you like strawberries? No, I don't like strawberries. We're just touching on the very basics of social and emotional learning, along with literacy and grammatical skills. If you have a very active child, I've used this in my class, where getting them to repeat the story or say what they have to say. I mean, this is a little bit advanced with the wording here, but look at this. The story, tell the story, and the child is jumping. Once upon a time, there were 3 wolves, and there was boom, 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 and they're going along, and it's a total body response to telling the story. So this also is a great way. You wouldn't use it every time, but can you imagine the joy of being able to get it out your system? I can tell my story and I'm using my body at the same time. There are a lot of strategies for children who have ADHD in the classroom, and maybe that's something we can look at another time. The story map again, where the teacher has put the keywords, the tricky words from the story up so the children can actually follow the storyline. And this is a great way to get children practicing and speaking their English and also their mother tongue. And I've put this one in because this was done for a dyslexic child, and they use clip art and also dictation, the facility to make their own one. So we're not excluding anyone from the process of using language. Now, this is a very quick activity because I know we are working with time, and this is about how we can use resources we have in the classroom to do cross-curricular learning, but also touching on emotional and the social learning. So we have the now redundant gloves that are not really used very much, but look at that. Bean, carrot, it's tactile, the children can see it, they're focused, it's come off of a page, we've made it live. This one, fine motor skill development, look at that. We've got children pushing beads into their hands in a Ziploc. Again, a great way. I love this one, and I have done it in my class, which is the volcano experiment, but look at the emotions. And with a little bit of food coloring with the vinegar and the baking powder, the children have been able to say, well, you know, the happy face with the yellow hair, we've got colors, we've got recognizing emotions. Which one do you like? Oh, I like the one with the green hair and the ugly face. They're able to discriminate there. Food, what I like, a big area for children, what they like and what they don't like about food, but also think about what we could be doing with a simple activity like that and maths. So this is a great science activity, but apart from science, we're talking about what I like, what I don't like. Size, growth, time. This one, fine motor skills, colors, and also, you know, hygiene. This one, it crosses English language, learning about foods, what I like, what I don't like, size, portions, quantities, colors, hot, cold, and even where foods come from. This simple little thing here. So you can imagine opening up these little activities is not only giving children to talk about how they feel about something, but giving you as a teacher the opportunity to passively evaluate and assess what they know. Science, social and emotional learning, colors, time, how quickly, was it slow, was it fast? And this one is math, but look at this, they're using fine motor skills, colors, and also its recognition, quantity, along with the number value. So if we think of even lifting that out into the physical environment, look at that. You know, a wonderful way where children who are busy, noisy, maybe are instantly drawn. What is this on the floor? Curiosity, size, how big is it? What do you think it is? A simple activity like this can engage children immediately. And if you think how this could be extended into foot, how can this be extended out into another area? Children can be oralizing, role play, drawing. What do you think it looked like? My monster has. He likes to eat. He likes to live. He doesn't like. We're giving children autonomy within their learning. A simple activity like this, where you can get the children to come into class and it's like, wow, look who's been in our classroom last night. What do you think it was? Hypothesizing, predicting, and then the end product could be as simple as creating a Play-Doh monster, drawing, or dressing up. Can you imagine how children can really extend their learning with a simple activity like this? I'm a big fan of animated films with no language because also it's something that children can do at home and then bring to the classroom. Be ready. Again, we're addressing the learning styles, which does have an impact on behavior. I keep going how these two can come together, but something as simple as this can activate all this area of learning. Even this one little pause here, how many animals? Big, small, colours, what are they doing? Who has been to the water? And here we can guess the story. What are they doing? Maybe children don't know about fishing, maybe children do. But you can see that this then leads on to getting the foundation right for when we go to primary and they have the sequencing skills in place. So these are free films on YouTube, just silent animated films. And they cover a lot of topics. But look at that. I love the fact that we can have the stop start. But my key to this is letting children watch it at home so they at least have the knowledge before we join the class and we're not losing time in class watching it just for familiarization. Very quickly, talking about the emerging styles, one of the things I notice with children is that we often don't know if they have hearing, auditory or visual issues because they don't know. They think everybody sees everything the same as them. If they're hearing a particular sound in phonics, they think everyone else is hearing it the same way. And then they may have an issue with processing the sound, but also with what they see visually. Make it easy for children. You can see here how this is really busy. How frustrated would you be if you had the color of the fonts and the background that was really hard for your eyes? And you may not believe that black and white is probably the worst for dyslexic. So here is just a little idea of what colors work. Pastel colors if you're doing presentations for children. And also these are fonts that can be found on your computer. But this open dyslexic font is a 3-dimensional font which can be downloaded for free. And it helps children. It even helps children who we don't know yet has issues with processing. And again, I'm going back to that behavior because if you can't see properly, if you can't hear properly, if you're looking around and children are getting on and you don't know why I can't see that letter, if we try and put things in place, because again, establishing what children have often goes with ages and stages, these milestones that we have, that by a certain age, you should be able to do a certain thing. But what has happened with the pandemic is this is all slowed down. So this might be helpful for you in understanding that we can just put good things in place for a good reason. Now, what you can see here is information that I've highlighted, and you can see here that communication and language development is a big priority after the pandemic because we are observing delays in speech and language. As I mentioned, these delays have come from children only being receptive to language and not being able to interact. When the teacher is online with 25 children, the key is keeping quiet so that you can hear me. And in the classroom, we now have children who are very vocal, but we need to tune in on how they use that. Also, referrals. More children are being flagged up with special educational needs. And somebody asked me, why is this? There's a debate whether that we are more aware of special educational needs and we flag them up earlier, or it is a genuine thing that's happening, that children are becoming more tuned into one particular way of learning and they can't do it any other way. It's always been a case that children have a preferred way. But if we have everything geared up for reading and writing and a child is fluent with digital literacy, you can see where we're going to have that problem as well with behavior. So what's the solution? We have to have an environment rich with language in language 1 and language 2, the mother language, and if we're doing with the second language as well. And the focus of extending vocabulary. Children are way behind at 5 years old with the amount of vocabulary they're supposed to have. Is it because they're not practicing it and it's been embedded? They may understand it, but are they not practicing it? So again, everything needs to be brought down to opportunities to practice and put into place speech. And the big thing here, the negative impact on social and emotional development. Children have missed a chunk of the interactions in the playground where they disagree and make up, where they have opinions, what they like and what they don't like. And also during the class, the dripping in of, and what do you think of that? How do you feel about that? Who likes it? Me? Who doesn't like it? They're allowed to not like things, and also talk about how they feel. Give visual cues that children are able to go and look at and touch. You know, if am I feeling, if I can't express it, can I look at a poster and say, right, I'm up here on the red. This is how I'm feeling. I'm looking at the angry face, or I'm feeling sad. These then make your child socially secure as they move on through their learning journey. And before it was like, why do we need to put so much emphasis on this? Because longitude studies that have been done in the US have shown that children who start off having a solid foundation of emotional security tend to do extremely well during their education journey. And then that moves on to their private life and successful life in the big wide world. In how we do that is also not just focusing on academic excellence, but also, as we looked at before, creating a whole child. And all this advice comes from Ofsted. So what you notice in the classroom, remember, you have probably been teaching for a very long time. So you will notice the changes very quickly. You will notice that for years you've been working in a classroom, you have your barometer going up and down on different behaviors with children. You come back into the classroom and you immediately notice everything is different from before. This is how it's going to be for a few years, and we have to try and work around it. So just remember that, and it's also for parents as well. They're going to notice. The curriculum hasn't changed. Although we are implementing more social emotional learning, mindfulness, it's how are you educated and equipped to deal with this in the classroom as well? What are you doing and what are you providing to facilitate this? Post-COVID, we have a lot of things that we have to put in place. And again, specific training may not be available, but there's a lot of information on the web, conferences like this, that will enable you to be equipped to deal with the post-COVID kind of like meltdown on education. And this will affect your planning. You know, if you have planning put in place, try and make it more fluid in that, yes, we've got to reach these milestones, but how are we going to do it? And if we don't reach these milestones, what is in place for us to try and reach these targets within a decent time frame? And what can you do? As a teacher, you can equip yourself with the knowledge. One, what is the behavior issues that you may have in you? What are they? Also, how are you equipped to deal with emerging learning styles? Because we all have different learning styles, but predominantly now, children tend to be audio-visual learners, but we need them to have the life skill of reading and writing using a pen and paper and also proper books. What can you do to get that going in your classroom and getting children speaking, and also your knowledge of social emotional learning? Evaluation and assessments, they don't always have to be things that children do at the end of a unit. It's what you hear and what you see in children doing activities like I have showed you in this little session. Are they speaking? Are they talking? Are they collaborating? Can you hear key vocabulary? Can you hear what they're saying about how they feel? And also, what catch-up strategies can you implement? And these are small scale ones. It's a huge challenge that teachers are finding that areas of the curriculum have big pockets of emptiness. And it's how am I going to fill that without children who know it getting bored and moving forward. What we don't want is children going into primary where it's going to be harder to fill those gaps with a bigger curriculum. What can we do? So I hope that you've enjoyed this little session that I've done. And again, it's wonderful to be able to share with you, even though it's a short period of time. And I look forward to seeing you again. So thank you very much for inviting me here today. And I hope it's been very valuable information. Bye for now.